This is your Daily 5 for Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Even if you're not all that interested in video games, you have likely at least heard something about the fact that Valve has announced a small group of new products that will complement their already successful and popular Steam Deck. They have announced the Steam Machine, which is a moderately powered, small form factor, essentially living room gaming PC that is meant to, as I just said, go into kind of a common space and is meant to run not the top end games, obviously, but a large number of Steam titles, as well as, based on some videos I've seen, a lot of potential usage in retro gaming space, being able to run old games through emulators, very similar to what the Steam Deck does for a lot of people. They also announced the Steam Frame, which is a VR headset, very similar in a lot of ways, it seems like, to the PlayStation Move, where there's a goggle-style headset and a couple of controllers. And they have their new Steam controller, which is an updated version of a controller I had for a long time, but ultimately, I really just could never get used to those haptic thumbstick things they were trying to do. It was an interesting idea, and I'm sure if it had been more popular, they would have stuck with it. But the new controller is definitely trying to split the difference there, where they're doing a very, well, mostly I would say PlayStation-style controller with those haptic touchpads, but they're not going all in on that the way they did with the first one, which I think is a very smart move. And a lot of people think that this has the potential to be a very successful product, particularly the Steam Machine, but really any of it for Valve. And, you know, a lot of times when stuff's announced and people get hands-on and they do glowing reviews of it, I'm generally pretty skeptical. But I'll be honest, I think that this is probably something that these articles and these reviewers are onto. I think they're right, because I didn't think about this initially, but the more I've kind of looked at even my own gaming habits lately, there is a middle market that most of the video game industry is ignoring. For a while, it was all about mobile, dirt cheap, and let's be honest, pretty shoddy games that you could play on a phone or a tablet. And on the other end, you had the AAA or the top tier space, where many games are trying to be more and more expensive because they're putting in features like, say, 4K 120 with ray tracing. Very nice stuff if you can appreciate it, but the reality is that not that many people really care. Certainly it's nice, but I don't know a lot of people who are really making buying decisions based on whether ray tracing and 4K 120 are present. What they're trying to figure out is how they're going to be able to afford games that are going to be $80, $90, and $100, and how they're possibly going to be able to afford more than a couple of those, even within a long time span. Now you bring along the Steam Machine, which has access to the Steam library, and there are many titles in there that, yes, they may not be cutting edge, they may not be from this year or last year, but they may only be a few years old, play very well, and often can be had in a very reduced price during the almost constant Steam sales, which are legendary for demolishing wallets. But the difference is, in a Steam sale, you might pick up 4 to 8 games for what you might pay for a AAA game, a single one, now, and those games will be able to run on this PC natively anywhere you put it. Whereas with some of these other games, you're going to have, let's say, have a PlayStation Pro to maximize it. You might have to have a Switch 2. You might have to have a high-end gaming rig. And so if this machine will play most games fairly well, even in a slightly reduced state in some cases, maybe at 1440 as opposed to 4K, I think that's a big market. I think it's a much bigger market than even some of these people are estimating. Because again, I look at myself and I think over time, I really just appreciate the games that play well over the ones that really look all that great. It's just not a priority. And I think compounding that with how expensive a lot of these modern games are, I think there's a market here that Valve is potentially positioned very well to capture. And I think if you look at the success of the Steam Deck and to some degree the Nintendo Switch, it does demonstrate that. The thing with the Nintendo Switch, or with Nintendo as a company, I mean, is that they don't often reduce their prices. So their games tend to be on the more expensive side, even if they're not $80 necessarily, although they are starting to dabble in that as well. But again, somebody wants to go and find a game on Steam that's, let's say, 5 years old and it's $20 or less on a sale, and be able to play it on this machine and have a great time with it because they passed on it before, never got around to it for whatever reason, or remember liking it and just haven't played it in a while. That's very compelling. Here's something that's unique about the Steam Machine that I can't say about any other console outside of the Switch Lite, is that I think my wife would play it. And I cannot say that about almost anything else but the Switch Lite. So I will be very interested. I'm interested in the Steam Machine, but I'm also going to be watching how it performs, because I think some of these people who are saying it'll be successful, I think they may be underestimating how well it will do. Time will tell, but it looks awfully good from here. Later.